Thank you, Mr. Velda. Appreciate the opportunity. I just want to, take this time to really, just thank God. Um, just amazing how His hand has been on my life this entire time. And so I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful to be here tonight. My name is Chiquita Tillman. I am a survivor of sex trafficking, but I am thriving today. I'm an author. I am now a certified mental health coach, and I'm a speaker. And I just, my prayer tonight is that once I share my story, that it would spark others to get involved, to raise your voice, to use your platforms to continue to raise awareness on human trafficking, because it is a global epidemic. What is human trafficking? Human trafficking is a crime involving the exploitation of a person for labor, services, or commercial sex by force, fraud, or coercion. It's with an estimated annual profit of $150 billion. And I call that stealing freedom for profit. Currently, they have they estimate it's approximately 28 million victims in human trafficking today. And out of that number, over 6 million is caught up in commercial sex. What people don't understand is traffickers can be anyone. They can be male or female. It could be an intimate partner. It can be your spouse. It could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be a neighbor. It could be your boss. It could be someone in law enforcement, someone in the legal system. I've seen all kinds of cases. It can even be a pastor. Not too long ago, there were 3 pastors busted in Ohio for sex trafficking teenage girls, ages 14, 15. So anyone can be a trafficker. And I'm sure you're familiar with Ghislaine Maxwell, who was a recruiter for Jeffrey Epstein. Female. She got 20 years, but she participated in the criminal act as well. So she is where she belongs. But I just want people to know that it's not just men that are out here trafficking our kids. Traffickers, they target vulnerable people who have needs that they can fill, like a place to live, food, clothing, and sometimes it could be love, even though it's false love, emotional support, or a sense of belonging. They know. Those who are at risk are those living in poverty, living in unstable living situations, the homeless, runaways. You have people that have a history of trauma, which is like physical abuse, sexual abuse, someone with an addiction. You have those that are in foster care. Those are in child welfare system, because those in foster care, they move around a lot. And actually, after they age out of foster care, a lot of them don't have anywhere to go. So they end up on the streets and they become vulnerable to being trafficked. And then you have the LGBTQ, they are at risk as well. I was a target, and I'm going to share my story. And when I share my story, I want you to see the hand of God in it, because I didn't see it at the time. But when I reflect and go back, I'm like, my God, He was protecting me even in the midst of it all. I was born to a young mother who did not want the responsibility of raising me. I endured a lot of physical abuse as a result of that. I was molested several times by different boyfriends of hers. And even though I would tell people about it, nobody believed me, or no one wanted to do anything about it. And that's a stigma in the Black households. We keep quiet about things. And so either you don't want to deal with it or you don't know how to deal with it. When I was 12 years old, my mother decided she was going to marry this particular man who was molesting me. When I told her that he was crawling into my bed, she hit me in my face and told me that I was lying. And he sat there and he laughed about it. Well, she decided that I was going to go live with my father. And he was a man that I didn't know. I didn't know him at all. But she decided that she didn't want me to go with her and her boyfriend. So I ended up going to live with a father that I didn't know. My father was very abusive as well, and he was an alcoholic. So after enduring so much abuse, I decided I wanted to commit suicide. So I took an entire bottle of pills and I laid on the bed and I waited to die. My sister was 4 years younger than me at the time. She came into the room and she couldn't wake me up. So she called her mom at work and they rushed me to the hospital. They pumped my stomach and the doctor asked me why did I want to kill myself. And at that particular time, my father was walking through the door and he was angry because he had to take off work. And so the doctor looked at my father and he was like, never mind, I see the reason. So about, I would say I was with my father maybe about a year. When I was 13, I went to go live with an aunt. She had a live-in boyfriend. I thought he was very nice. They treated me well. One day I was outside and he asked if I wanted to go to the store and get some candy. And what teenager, don't like candy? So I went to the store with him and he molested me in the car. And he told me not to tell my aunt. And so I was afraid, but I told her anyway. And she didn't believe me. And he wanted me out of the house because I spoke up. So I ended up going back to my mother. Now, my mother had married another man by this time. She hated the fact that I had to come back to her. So she was very abusive and she would lock me out of the house. I would be sitting outside on the stairs, in the wee hours of the night. It was just really, really bad. And one day she hit me in the face because someone came to the door looking for me. And I just grabbed a trash bag and I just put all my clothes into the trash bag and I was like, I'm out of here. It was to the point where I wanted to hit her back. And I ran away. I ran away to Los Angeles, California, and we all know how big that is. I'm from a small town. When I got to Los Angeles, I figured that I was going to look up an aunt that I heard lived there, my grandmother's sister. I didn't know anything about directory assistance. I didn't know anything about how to look up anyone. So I was at the Greyhound bus station, downtown LA. I walked around. I ended up sleeping down there. I stayed down there for a few days. I ended up running out of, money. I didn't have any food. I was hungry. I was cold. I didn't know how to reach anybody. I didn't know at the time that I was being watched by a recruiter. He was a young man. He walked up to me. We started talking. He offered me a place to stay. He offered me food. And he said that he would help me find my aunt. And I trusted him. I'm naive. I'm 15 years old at this time. He took me to the home he was staying in. He fed me, he gave me a bed to sleep in. But that next morning, he crawled into that bed and he raped me. He then took me to a couple's apartment, and it was a black guy and a white girl. I didn't know these people, of course. I mean, I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. I don't know where I am. I don't know anybody. And so I did ask if I could use their restroom. And when I came out, the guy who recruited me or, you know, helped me, whatever, had sold me to this pimp. And because I was so resistant, I was beaten very badly that night. That was his way of getting me under control. So she had to take me out on the street and show me the ropes. That was her job. I was beaten my first night because I allowed a John to control the situation. That was a lesson that I learned very quickly. You're to get them off as quickly as possible, get the money, and keep going. So after enduring this over and over and over, I mean, being raped, being beaten, you kind of lose yourself. You kind of withdraw inward and you start pretending like it's not even you that's out there that's enduring the abuse. Several months had passed. They did a what they call a prostitution sweep, and that's where they gather up all the prostitutes that they see and take them to jail. I was a new one to them. They knew her, but they didn't know me. And I had lied about my age. I had lied about my name. I didn't want to go back to my mother. That's crazy, right? I didn't want to go back to that abuse. I didn't want to go back. I ended up going to a women's jail. It's called Civil Brand in Los Angeles. And I spent the night in a jail, 15 years old, with the women. I didn't sleep none that night. They ended up calling me to go to court the next morning. They called my fake name. I was using my fake name. So when I get to the court, some of the ladies that were in the holding room, they explained to me what was going to happen. And I became afraid because I knew that if I got before the judge, they were going to find out who I really was and send me back. I never got to go before the judge because they came out and they dismissed because they got me on loitering. So now I'm sitting outside the jail. I don't know where I am. I'm sitting outside. I don't know what to do. And this little white girl comes over and sits next to me. And she's about my age. She maybe a year older than me. We started talking. Now she's a girl. So I'm not thinking anything. I'm not thinking that she's a recruiter. I'm not thinking anything of that nature. She said that I can come to her house. Great. I go to her house with her. There's 3 pimps in this house. Now I'm under the control of another pimp who was worse than the first pimp. All of the pimps had, their own section of the house. The house was big. The ones that the pimp that I was under the control of, we all had to sleep in one room. We had to sleep in one bed. It was a king size bed. We all slept in the same bed. We could not leave the room. If we needed to go to the restroom, we would be escorted to the restroom. He would take time forcing himself on us. I mean, well, she was in love with him, so it was not a force for her, but it was a force for me. We had to get up every morning at 6 a.m. to take a bath. And he would stand in the doorway and watch us bathe. We could not be out of his sight. He had men to watch us. So after we, got dressed, we got in the limousine and took us to work. And we worked from 8 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. every day, just like we were going to a regular job. You were expected to bring a certain amount every day. And if you didn't, you were beaten. I had endured guns held to my head, raped, robbed, knife to my throat. It was horrible. It was horrible. I ended up being pregnant, getting pregnant by the pimp. I didn't know I was pregnant though. I was under 100 pounds. I was 15. I was under 100 pounds. So you couldn't see a belly or anything. I was just really skinny and I was very sickly. I was so sick one day. I went into this store and it had like a newspaper stand in the back. And I went back there to go read something just to kind of gather myself together. I looked towards the counter and there was this security guard standing there. He was large and he kept looking at me and I was thinking that he wanted a date, and I was like, oh my God, no. And so I waited for him to leave and I knew that I had to leave out because I know that the men were watching and that they were going to come looking for me at any moment. So I went out and the security guard was standing by his car and he said, can I talk to you? And I said, no. And I started walking and I heard a voice that was so crystal clear, said, trust him. I didn't know the voice of God, but the voice was so clear. And I turned around and I went back to him. And he said, what are you doing out here? You're just a baby. And so I'm talking to him and I'm trying to talk to him as if I'm propositioning him, so that they won't become suspicious or anything. And so he told me, he said, well, I get off at 5 o'clock. He said, meet me on Figueroa and I will, take you away, help you. Let me back up. There were a few times where I've gone to police officers to help me. And instead of helping me, they made me perform sexual acts to avoid going to jail. So I didn't trust anybody really, but for some reason I held out hope all day. When 5 o'clock came, I see the limousine coming, right? I'm on the opposite side of the street. So I said, okay, I'm going to get to Figueroa and I'm just going to just go. The girl came around the corner and she was like, it's time to go. And I lied. And I said, well, I have one more customer around the corner. I took off running. I mean, I ran as fast as my little legs could carry me. And I kept hearing someone say, Lisa, that was my fake name, Lisa. And I thought it was his guys. And I was like, they're just going to have to shoot me in the back. I'm not going back. When I heard my name to the left of me, I looked and it was the security guard. He came back and he got me. So I jumped in the car. He took me to a motel. He went and got me some food and he said, stay here. I'm going to bring my mom in the morning. I really didn't believe him, but I felt safe at that moment because they didn't know where I was. the pimp didn't know where I was. So I felt a little safe. But I still didn't know where I was, what I was going to do or anything. The next morning, when he went home, I found out later, when he went home, he told his mother about me. And she said, leave her out there. She's probably hardcore. She's probably this, that. And so he said, but Mom, you taught me that if I ever saw anyone that needed help, to help them. So she couldn't go back on what she taught him. So she came and she brought her mother, his grandmother. When they saw me, they were like, you're just a baby. They took me into their home. And that's when the grandmother told me that I was pregnant. I was far. I was like 5 months and didn't know it because I didn't have a belly. They ended up adopting me. Of course, they had to go through the courts. They had to find my mother and everything. She told them she didn't want me. They could have me. They took me in. About a month after I was with them, my water broke. I didn't know what it was. I was like, I can't stop peeing. That's all I kept screaming. I can't stop peeing. And so they figured my water broke and they took me to the hospital, and the doctors didn't even believe that I was as far along as I said. They induced the labor. They told me when I felt the contractions to let them know. Well, when I felt the contractions, I did not let anyone know. I didn't press the button. I didn't do anything. I sat there and I delivered my own son. And I named him Caleb. I still get a little emotional about that part because I never was able to have kids. And, but the bright ending is that I was adopted into a loving family who's so supportive and so loving and so caring. And it was just amazing how God just orchestrated everything. But let me tell you, being rescued, that was just the beginning. My mental state was off the charts. I was angry, I was depressed, I was suicidal. I did attempt suicide again. I turned to alcohol. I fought a lot. I didn't know how to control my emotions. I didn't even know what I was going through. I was just mentally unstable, which led me to do a lot of dangerous things. I turned to, I won't say a life of crime, but I did some criminal stuff. Um, I did drug trafficking. I would strap dope to my body and fly it from state to state, and then come back with thousands strapped to my body. I did that. I did, um, um, what do you call those, money orders, traveler's checks, fraudulent traveler checks schemes. I did that. I was involved in a lot of stuff. I did dancing, private dancing. Um, I couldn't keep a relationship. And it was because I didn't know my worth. I didn't know that I was valuable to God. I didn't know anything of that nature. I just knew I wanted to be loved. And so I had abandonment issues. And I would cling to men. And then I would be hurt when they left. So it wasn't until like years later, I cried out to God one day and I said, God, what is wrong? I need help. I said, something's wrong. I need help. And he led me to a counselor that specialized in trauma. And I went through extensive counseling. And he took me all the way back to childhood. And when I tell you the freedom that I felt, because I had carried on so much that was not for me to carry, I learned my worth. I developed a strong relationship with God, and I said, God loves me. He loves me. And looking back, I see his hand in everything. And my purpose in this life, I know now, is to help others in this life, help rescue them, help steer them in the right direction on getting help. Survivors that are still struggling with their emotions, their mental, to be there to help them, support them, guide them. Because I now know that my life, what I've gone through, was for someone else, was for me to help others. I used to cry and ask, why was my life so hard? But I understand. I understand. God is good. He's really, really good. And you can help in this fight against human trafficking. And some of the ways that you can help is by learning the indicators, by maybe attending some awareness trainings, learn how they target and recruit youth, educate, families, children on the dangers of human trafficking so that they won't be easily manipulated or lured. Encourage schools to incorporate human trafficking in their curricula. You can volunteer, support your local anti-trafficking organizations, maybe even host an awareness event at your church or, some local place in your community. You can also reach out to your local state, federal, local elected officials. Tell them about your concerns. Find out what they're doing to fight against that monster. That's what I call it. There are some red flags I do want to share with you for sex trafficking. And let me just backpedal a little bit. For those who are listening, if you are a parent, you have small children, and we know that the world right now, everyone is online. They're on the internet. Please be careful of who your children are conversing with online, because a lot of predators are pretending to be children. They are watching everything. They are engaging your children, engaging them so that they can trust them and lure them from their homes. So be mindful of that. Maybe put the privacy settings, check the privacy settings, make sure that they are not sharing personal information online. Just be mindful of that. Even with the gaming apps, the gaming videos, they're listening. Those are adults too that are on those gaming apps that those children are engaging with. So please just be careful of what your children are doing. If you see a young person that's with an older person and they can't talk for themselves, they seem controlled, they can't go anywhere alone, just be mindful of that. That can be an indication, a red flag. You see someone with like physical injuries, branding, like tattoos, because some pimps will brand their victims with their pimp name. Gangs that are involved in human trafficking will brand them with their gang names or symbols. If a person is deferring to another person before giving information, a person seems overly fearful, submissive. If there's a child that's in school, the child is coming to school and they're very tired, they're not alert, they are disheveled, their behavior has changed. They may be acting out, or they may become withdrawn. It could be a red flag. That could be an indication. So just be mindful of, of that. Clothing that's inappropriately sexual, or inappropriate for weather, just stuff like that. You might even have, just say, a teenager that's all of a sudden just wearing all these fancy clothes and shoes and jewelry. They don't have a job or anything. Like, that's something is not right there. Some of the venues for sex trafficking, I just wanted to share that with you, is like pornography. There's illicit massage parlors, spas. There's the hotels, motels. There's residence-based commercial sex, which is like what I was held in a house. Online ads, escort services, strip clubs, bars, truck stops. Then, we do have labor trafficking that is under human trafficking as well. And then you have that domestic work, agricultural farms, construction, restaurant, food service, hospitality, landscaping service, housekeeping, cleaning services. We don't know who's a victim of human trafficking because they're afraid to talk. They're afraid to speak out. Some are being held because they have a debt to pay off. And I'm talking about labor trafficking. And they've taken their documents. They're stuck. They're afraid. I always say, how can we reduce the demand for commercial sex, right? Target sex buyers. Because if the men aren't buying sex, traffickers and pimps lose their ability to make money. If they were to give out stiff fines, penalties, jail time to those that are buying sex, I really believe things will change. I really, really believe it. I really, really do. I really, really do. There are so many different trafficking out there. I just wanted to share some with you, if that's okay. You have like familial trafficking, and I'll give an example. Just say a mother was a survivor of rape. She's been prostituting for years, and just say some of the men start expressing interest in her kids, and she takes one of the kids and she tells them, it's now your turn to contribute to the household. And she takes the child out onto the streets. You have child trafficking. You have an example, a parent who's sexually abusing their child. And then they offer the child to others for money, for sexual gratification, in exchange for access to other children. You have, I call it the online trolling, which is, just say a teenager is dreaming of becoming a model, and she's posting different pictures on social media. And then she's contacted by a man who says he's a modeling agent, and he wants to fly her to where he's at so she can take pictures and stuff in his studio. Once he gets her there, he takes her out on the town, he wines and dines her. He tells her to be nice to his friends because they can, help her to get contracts. Well, he ends up prostituting her. Her family doesn't know where she is because she snuck off. Be careful what you're doing online. Be careful of online advertisements that seem too good to be true. It probably is. It probably is. And then you have survival sex. I'm going to say, use an example, a boy who's gay, and he's being beaten at home because they don't accept that. And so he runs away, and just say he's camped out at a bus station. Some other kids tell them about a man who can help him, will let him stay at his house for a price. He goes, exchange his body for a place to live, for food. That's survival sex. Another form of trafficking. Exploitation of addiction. A trafficker be outside. I'm just giving examples. He'd be outside of a courthouse. He knows that that's where people that are busted for drugs, they're coming out. He's offering them free drugs. They go with him. He makes sure that they are in their addiction. And then soon he tells them, in order for them to have any more access to the drugs, they have to sell their bodies for the drugs. And then we have boyfriending. You're in love with this boy. He's showering you with gifts. He's taking you out on the town. He's making you fall so hard for him. He takes you to a party. You meet his friends. He tells you to be nice to his friends, so they can give him money and jewelry and this and that. And, you thinking, he's acting like it's not a big deal. So you do it because you love him. But then next thing you know, it's becoming more frequent. You're doing it all the time. That is another form. And then, of course, I talked about gangs a little bit. Gangs, just say you grew up in a gang-infested neighborhood. Gangs, they're controlling the streets. They're controlling that area. So you join the gang because you want the protection. They end up telling you, yeah, you're going to have to go prostitute because we owe a debt to a rival gang. And so she's now sold into, prostitution. And they may brand her. They may put their gang symbol sign on her body as a way of letting other people know she belongs to us. So there's a lot of different ways of trafficking someone. It really is. And I know in Canada, it's big out there as well. And I'm sure that you all are aware of your Canadian human trafficking hotline there. It's 24 hours, it's 7 days a week. If you know of someone or you suspect someone, you can call. Their number is 833-900-1010. Or you can go to their website and they have resources. They can connect, victims, survivors to resources, services. They can help them. But if you think someone is in immediate danger, please call 911. please. And what am I doing now? I'm thriving in my life. I just became certified as a mental health coach. I'm writing a second book. I am mentoring. I'm speaking out and raising my voice. I'm trying to educate as many as I can, help as many as I can fight this monster, because we all do it together. We can eradicate human trafficking. I I believe it, and I believe God is raising up leaders, raising up people, pulling them out so that they can go back in and pull out some more. Because God is awesome like that.